Okay, this little video is for creating a shake roof. In other words, shingles that are made of wood. So to do that, I'm going to create a material that has this wood fence texture mapped to it. And this is going to be a nice texture to use because we'll be able to move UVs all over the place here to make every single shingle look as though it was cut from a different piece of wood. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to go into my hypershade. I'm actually going to create a blend for this because typically there's a little bit of sheen to them, a little bit of reflectivity. So blend, shingles, map the color, file, folder, and then go hunting for 3D house, textures, wood fence, this guy. And I'm going to open that up, and that's just going to be sitting in my hypershade ready to go. Now the next thing we need to do is create the first shingle. We're going to use one shingle, and we're going to duplicate the heck out of it, and then we're going to use that row of shingles to group and duplicate those. And I know that sounds confusing now, but you'll see what I mean when we get there. So the first shingle is going to be just a polygon plane. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but I'm going to go to my polygon plane options, and I'm going to make it simple. Let's keep it 1 to 1 with 1 and 1 divisions, and I'm going to create it. And the reason it may sound weird is because it's a flat plane. It's a flat plane, and it has no depth, it has no thickness, but we're going to make it thick eventually. It's just easier to texture map this way and move our UVs around before we turn it into a thick piece of wood. So I'm just sort of eyeballing the size of this thing. I think it's pretty big. For this example, I'm going to make it, to speed things up, I'm going to make it a little bit wider. And typically shingles are a little bit longer than they are wide, so somewhere around there. Now we want the top right corner of this shingle to meet with the top of the wall, so I'm actually going to get out of texture mode and turn on my wireframe on shaded. And then something very important we have to do, which is we have to move our pivot to the top right corner of our plane. So to do that, on my keyboard, all I have to do is hit Insert, and that'll free up my pivot. And then, because there's a vertex on the corner, I'm going to hold down V, as in vertex, and move that and snap it to that vert. I'm going to orbit around to make sure it's snapped there instead of accidentally somewhere else. And then to lock that in for now, I hit Insert again to get out of that mode. And it feels like I got some processing going on here, and things aren't happening as fast as they should. But now we're going to move that corner to the top peak right corner of, or front corner of my roof. So now I'm just going to hold down V to snap to vert and move that to there. Now if you look at it, it's snapped to that top corner and it's very flat. Anticipating the future in which we're going to extrude the face downward a little bit to create that thickness, I'm going to go to my front camera. There we go. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Now, again, I'm anticipating this thickness of the shingle. So I'm going to move it up, and considering this is going to be the thick part of that shingle, maybe down a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and texture it. So I'm going to go to Perspective View. I am going to turn my textures back on and then select by face. Now we're going to project in the Y direction, and we're going to assign that wood fence texture to it, or material, excuse me. Now we have this thing that's sideways, which is fine, except for we don't want it that sideways. We want it to flip it 90 degrees. So I'm going to go directly into my UV editor. There we go. Hit F so I can see exactly where those are. I'm going to move it the heck out of the center, move it out of dodge somewhere else, and then I'm going to select by UVs. And once we have our UVs, we can go into our UV toolkit over here And if I expand the transform attribute, you'll see we have the opportunity to rotate. Tools rotate 90 degrees. So I'm just going to hit that and flip them 90 degrees. And then we're going to scale them down. So R. And we want to cover just one little part, F to zoom in quickly, of a shingle. So now I'm moving them, scaling it down from the middle so that the width is correct. We want to try to keep these dark lines that are in between these pieces of wood out of there as much as possible, but some are going to sneak in. And I'm going to move it down over that knot and over a little bit. Might scale it down just slightly a bit more. And there we have the beginnings of our first shingle. So if I zoom out a little bit, you'll see we have that big shingle right there. Now, we are going to duplicate this plane several times so that we get a row of these shingles that span all the way across the top peak of the house. Also note, shingles usually hang over slightly the edge of our roof. And now when I go to my channel box, I'm going to notice that I've got some numbers in my translation attributes that I don't want. I want these to be 0, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to teach you that in a second. So I'm going to go up to my custom shelf, and I have freeze transformations on here. If you don't have freeze transformations, it's a valuable, quick tool to use. So you're going to want to go to modify, freeze transformations, and hold down Control Shift, add it to your shelf. I'm telling you, I got some processes going on in the background that's messing this up, but we'll get there. Now when I hit freeze transformations, everything gets zeroed out except for scale remains 1 to 1 to 1. All right, and now with that being the case, if I hit Control D to duplicate, and then I move the second shingle over and over just far enough so that we have a little gap there for these two shingles to breathe. And again, we can see tar paper through there, which is good. It's better than the gray material. Now I can take a note of the translate in Z number, which is this, and I can copy that. So I select it, Control C. Now I'm going to zoom way out, and we're going to go once again to that duplicate special options, and we're going to make sure that these are zeroed out. 0, 0, but my Z, remember X, Y, and Z. Oh, there's the bell. Is the correct number, and I'm going to duplicate this. So I don't know, it looks like I might need 15, 16. I'm going to duplicate it more than I think, because I can always delete the other ones, and I'm going to hit duplicate special, and it'll process, and there we have a big row. So that's pretty good. This one's too many, that one's too many, that one's too many, so I'm just deleting them. Now we have a row of shingles that all look exactly the same, and that's the problem that we want to avoid. We don't want a repetitive bunch of shingles. We want to make, again, each one look as though they're exactly the same, or excuse me, exactly different. All of them should be their own unique piece of wood. So to do that, we have to move the UVs of each piece of wood by hand, one at a time, which is a little bit tedious. So I'm going to select the next one that has the same texture. I'm going to hit F. I'm going to come up to my select by UVs, and I'm going to drag select that, and I'm just going to start moving, zoom out. I'm going to move these straight down on that piece of wood. Now it looks different automatically. Then I select the next one, UVs. I'm going to move it down further than that one. Then the next one, UVs, move it down further than that one. Even if they just vary a little bit, it's going to look way more effective than them all looking the same. Zoom out a little bit again, select UVs, move it way down, select UVs. We're already in UV mode, so we don't have to worry about it too much. UVs. I'm going to move this one down, and I'm going to move that over one to the next one. And I'm not being too careful with this. I can move it over first and then down. I'm just sort of memorizing where I'm moving these to make sure that I don't overlap them and get the same looking shingle. Honestly, though, at this point, because they're going to be so far away from each other in our 3D space, it's really not going to matter that much. I do want to try to avoid knots, because knots are sort of obvious. We're almost there, so bear with me. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, which might make it a little bit sloppy. So I move that one over one. Now I'm going to move that one over and down one. I can move to the middle if I want. Again, you don't have to be too careful with this. I think maybe down here somewhere. Two more. Maybe down here. And then maybe down here somewhere. So if I minimize this and I get out of here, and I'm actually going to take my wireframe unshaded off, and I'm looking at my shingles, and I don't see one that looks exactly the same. They all look pretty good. They look a little similar, but that's okay. So this right here is a good start. Now the next step is to group all of these shingles. So you can see I have plane 12 right here. Plane 10 is something else. I think it's a fence. So this is the top part. In my outliner, if I just hold down shift and select the last one, it selects all of them in between. So now I have all of my shingles selected. And then what I want to do is group them. So Control G. I'm going to call this Shingles 01. That's my shingles group 01. And you'll see that when I grouped them, it created the pivot for that group in the center of the world. Again, we want to move this pivot to the top right of that first shingle, so I have to hit Insert and then hold down V to snap to vert, and we're going to move it right there. Again, orbiting around to make sure I got it on that vert. That's good. Now we hit Insert again on our keyboard to get out of there. I did, but for some reason my computer's acting weird. Now we're going to go to front camera, and again I'm going to turn on wireframe unshaded. We're going to rotate all of these at the same time so that we don't want them parallel with the roof, because shingles work by fitting each one underneath the next row. So I'm going to open it up slightly, maybe to there, and I think that should be good. I may have to do this twice if I don't get that angle right, because if you don't, we duplicate, you're going to start getting sort of this weird line out here where we have a bunch of floating shingles. Okay, so we're going to try this one just like that. And now again, what I want to do with this group is I want to freeze transformations. Because we have a rotate Z here, and we're going to duplicate special, I don't want them to rotate oddly. So we have to get the number that we need to move them, right? So that's what we're trying to do right now. So if I go freeze transformation, then I just duplicate it once. Now we have shingles 2 group, which has a bunch of planes in it. Hit W, and now I'm going to go to my front view again, and I'm going to move that row together into place where it's tucked underneath that one, and we've got a similar space between here and here and here and there. Now I'm looking at my translates again. So those are the numbers we want to use for our duplicate special. And now I'm going to go edit, duplicate special, options, and now we have an X, copy, paste, and a Y, copy, paste. We don't want to move it in Z, so that's got to be 0, and I probably only need like 8 or so duplicates, but let's do 10. Again, we can delete these by groups, so it's not that big a deal. And I'm going to duplicate special and hope that the angle is correct. Now we got way too many of them. That angle looks pretty good. These are pretty close to the top of the roof. Now, we have another issue with this, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So now I'm going to select and get rid of the ones that are just floating in space. So if I just select that first shingle and hit the up arrow on my keyboard, it'll select the group node, as you can see here. Select shingles 12, delete, up, delete, up, delete, up, delete. And I'm actually going to do this last row because eventually, that's pretty close, but I need to scale the whole thing up a little bit more so we get an overhang right here, but we'll do that later. As you can see, though, we now have a serious pattern here that we don't want. So there's a pretty quick and easy solution to this. Once again, I'm going to select one of the shingles in the group that I want to alter. Hit my up arrow, so now we're in shingles 2, or I could just come over here and select that shingles 2 node for that parent node for the group. And then again, I'm going to go to my texture editor. Hit F, the frame. Interesting. So I forgot that when we have the parent node and we're looking in the texture or the UV editor, we don't see the texture at all, which is not good. So what we have to do is we have to expand Shingles 2, and we actually have to shift select all of them so we can see the textures. Now I'm in my UV editor. I hit F. If I go to select by UV, check it out. They're already almost selected, but I'm going to drag select them all anyway. And I'm just going to move these guys over like 3 spaces. And now we have different looking shingles there. Then I'm going to go down to Shingles 3. Shift select. UV. Move them. I can move them any way I want. I can move them over to the left now if we want a few. Doesn't matter, however many you want. Now I'm going to go to 4. Shift select. UV. I can move these straight up if we want. It's a fast way of doing it. 5. Bear with me, we're almost there. Again, UVs. I can move these down and over. 6. Once again, shift select. Click on UVs. I can move these over just 1. We'll see how that looks. You never know. Even though there might be some repeats in there, because again they're far enough away from each other in this space, may not look too bad. So shift select, UVs. I'm going to move this guy way over here. And there we go. If I click off now, get out of component mode, take off. We got a couple here that look the same, which is a problem. I don't know why these all look the same, but they do. For now, it'll work. I can go in individually and select them because I don't like the way those two look almost exactly. They're not exactly the same, but they look too close to being the same to me. And I can move this guy over to here, which will change that up pretty quickly. So now, again, we should have a nice little variation of shingles. They're all straight in a line, but they're overlapped a little bit. So we're in good shape. Now what we want to do is we want to extrude to give these shingles a little bit of thickness. So I'm going to orbit into an angle where I can drag select all the shingles and then some. So I drag selected all of them. I know I have them all selected. I don't want the chimney, so I'm going to hold down Control and click that. I don't want the house. Hold down Control and click that. And then I'm going to go to wireframe and make sure it's only those shingles that I have selected, which is correct. Back into texture mode. Now I'm going to go to select by face. I'm going to drag select all the faces. And then I'm going to do an extrude and cross my fingers because that's a lot of faces to extrude at one time. It shouldn't be that big a deal, but it may take a second. So I'm going to hit that extrude button. And it's going to process and hopefully not crash. And if it does crash, I'm going to be in trouble. Oh, we're good. And now, again, front view. Grab that Z arrow, and I'm going to push these down. And I don't care, really, if we get through the house here a little bit. It's okay. We just want to make sure there's nothing floating. Now, if we look at it, we've got some nice thick, although we have stretched textures there, it's fine. Nobody's ever going to know those are stretched. We have some nice shingles to work with here. Now this is almost a 20-minute video already, so I'm going to go through the next part really quickly and just talk about the concept. So what we want to do now is we want to vary how straight these are. We want to make it look like it's a little bit of an aged roof. So I'm going to go around, Control Shift, and select a bunch of random, not the house or the ground, bunch of random shingles that aren't connected to one another, and I'm going to alter how they're rotated. So I'm going to hit E. If I hit E on each of those and I rotate one of them, they're all going to rotate the same, and I might rotate them to flip up a little bit. Then I'm going to hide them, Control H. Now I'm going to select another series of them and do a rotation in the opposite direction. I might rotate in a little different way. I keep selecting all this stuff. I'm going quickly and I'm accidentally drag selecting Boom, 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 boom. Oh, all those look exactly the same. That's not good. We'll go in and fix that later. E, I might rotate them a little bit that way, a little bit that way, hide them, and you'll see what I mean. You can grab another series or whatnot and make those rotate as well. It just breaks up those straight lines. And I'm going to show all, display, show all, bring them back. I probably flipped them up a little bit too much, but you can see it sort of creates this idea that, hey, these shingles have been here a little while, they're a little bit warped, and gives it a little bit more realism. Okay, now the last part of this is pretty simple. I've done one roof. I don't want to do all that same work over here on the other side, so we're going to use what we've created. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to flip it so it'll be perfect on the other side. So I'm going to drag select all of the shingles, and I'm going to group them. All shingles left on the left side right there. Now we got to move the pivot of that group by hitting insert. Again, up to that same corner, hold down V. Make sure it's on that vert. There we go. Insert. And this should work here. Control D to duplicate. And if I go to my channel box and scale an X by -1, boom. We got the other side. Yes, it's repeated a little bit, but I don't care. It still looks pretty cool. So those are shingled roofs, shingles on the roof. They look pretty cool. I would still play with some of the specularity. They're a little too shiny, but we can go over that in the future. It's a 22-minute video, so hopefully you didn't fall asleep. But there's your shingles.